Under the desert skies of northern Mexico, 2,800 U.S. troops in armored columns moved through a supply route at night. Abrams tanks led the way, Bradleys and Strykers followed, with convoys of support trucks stretching into the darkness. It was supposed to be a routine movement, until the first warning came. At 2:46 a.m., satellite feeds picked up something unusual. Dust clouds stretching for miles, thousands of vehicles moving fast. A cartel convoy, massive and armed, was pushing straight into the desert. At first, the world thought this was another reckless show of force, but it wasn't. This was an attempt to crush an American battalion head-on. The convoy wasn't random. Cartel forces had prepared for weeks. Technicals with mounted .50 calibers and recoilless rifles, heavy trucks stacked with fighters, even captured armored cars rolled in formation. The desert floor shook as their columns split into wings, stretching across the sands to encircle the Americans. Dust rose in giant sheets like a sandstorm, covering their advance. From the ground, U.S. scouts peered into the haze and saw headlights, dozens, then hundreds, lining the horizon. The battlefield had been chosen. At 2:52 a.m., the opening strike came sudden. A burst of RPG fire streaked through the dark, detonating near the lead platoon. Engines roared as cartel trucks accelerated, headlights swerving wildly. Tracer fire arced into the night. The U.S. forward line opened up, heavy machine guns pounding back, but the scale of the attack was clear. The convoy wasn't scattered, it was a flood. Thousands of vehicles charging forward. The desert floor lit with gunfire, engines, and explosions. Within 90 seconds, encrypted reports hit the U.S. command post. Drones circling overhead locked onto the convoy. AWACS aircraft relayed the full picture. The response order came through. Full engagement. No retreat. What the cartel didn't know was simple. This desert valley was already mapped as a kill zone. Mine corridors had been placed along likely routes. Artillery grids had been plotted. The Americans had turned this stretch of desert into a box of fire. At 2:56 a.m., the kill zone opens. HIMARS rockets screamed into the sky, their trails cutting across the darkness. They struck the convoy head-on, shattering the lead vehicles and blocking the path. Seconds later, M777 howitzers fired in rolling waves, shells landing across the heart of the formation. Trucks carrying fuel erupted in towering fireballs. Technicals tore apart as shrapnel shredded their engines. Overhead, a 10 Warthogs swooped low, unleashing 30mm bursts that ripped technicals and armored cars into burning wrecks. The convoy, once surging forward, was collapsing into chaos. The desert looked empty when the night began. By 3 a.m., it was alive with fire, steel, and explosions. The convoy had walked directly into the trap, and now the Americans were about to finish what they had prepared for weeks. The order rippled across the U.S. battalion. Every artillery battery that had been silent until now came alive. M777 howitzers pounded the desert floor with coordinated barrages, shells landing in precise intervals. HIMARS rocket system shifted fire deeper into the convoy, cutting the middle section in half. The effect was instant. Trucks jackknifed, engines burned, and vehicles packed tightly together collided as explosions tore their columns apart. At 3:05 a.m., above, MQ-9 Reapers and smaller tactical drones hovered silently. Their infrared beams painted targets for artillery and aircraft. Every time a cartel technical tried to maneuver around wreckage, a drone marked it. Seconds later, a shell or missile erased it. Even vehicles that veered off the road into the sand were caught by circling UAVs and destroyed in precision strikes. The convoy had no safe angle of escape. The growl of turbofans cut through the explosions as the first A-10 Warthogs dove into the valley. Their 30mm cannons opened up with thunderous bursts, streams of tungsten tearing through trucks and armored cars. Each pass ripped multiple vehicles apart. Some technicals disintegrated instantly under concentrated fire, their crews thrown into the night. The desert floor shook as one strafing run after another shredded the forward wings of the convoy. Survivors tried to scatter, but artillery boxed them in. The trap was now fully sprung. Cartel formations that once looked organized dissolved into chaos. Vehicles reversed, collided, and became stuck on burning wreckage. Others drove blindly into mine corridors, detonating hidden charges that erupted in shockwaves of sand and fire. Entire sections of the convoy disappeared in clouds of smoke, their remains left as twisted hulks on the battlefield. At 3:13 a.m., cartel mortars and makeshift rocket launchers tried to fire back toward U.S. positions, but counter-battery radars immediately identified them. American guns redirected, silencing each launch within minutes. Crews barely had time to set up before a precision strike leveled their position. Every attempt to return fire was punished faster than it could be sustained. The kill zone tightened further. Abrams tanks advanced to secondary firing points, their 120mm cannons firing at long range into surviving vehicles. Bradleys provided covering fire, their autocannons sweeping the edges of the convoy. Infantry dismounted and began establishing perimeter control, securing ridgelines to ensure no breakout could succeed. Every element of the battalion was working in sync: artillery, armor, air, and infantry striking in layered waves. At 3:18 a.m., cartel fighters abandoned trucks in droves, sprinting into the open desert. But overhead drones caught their movements, relaying coordinates to circling helicopters. Apache gunships swept low, unleashing Hellfire missiles and 30mm cannon bursts into fleeing clusters. Survivors scattered into smaller groups, only to be hunted down one by one. By 3:20 a.m., what had started as thousands of vehicles moving like a sandstorm had been turned into a shattered wreckage field. Burning trucks, collapsed armored cars, and silenced guns littered the desert floor. The Americans had unleashed the full weight of coordinated firepower, and the convoy was breaking apart under relentless pressure. But the battle wasn't over. The cartel was preparing a desperate counterattack. Even as flames consumed hundreds of vehicles, the surviving cartel commanders gave one last order: charge. Mortars launched blindly into the night. Rockets arced toward the American lines, and dozens of trucks roared forward at full throttle. Engines screamed as technicals mounted with heavy machine guns and recoilless rifles surged directly at U.S. infantry positions. It was a desperate attempt to break through the wall of steel closing around them. The trucks came in waves, headlights blazing, gunners firing wildly into the ridgelines. From the ground, it looked like chaos, but through American targeting systems, it was clear. Every vehicle was tracked, every approach already mapped. The moment the first wave crossed the halfway point, the response began. Javelin missiles streaked from concealed launch points, their warheads punching through engines and turrets. NLAW teams fired in pairs, hitting trucks back to back, detonating fuel tanks in massive fireballs. The charging line broke apart instantly, wrecks piling into one another as more missiles slammed in. At 3:27 a.m., Apaches skimmed low over the battlefield, their Hellfire missiles locking onto moving targets with precision. One strike tore through a cluster of 3 trucks, leaving only burning frames behind. 30mm cannon bursts ripped into fighters attempting to dismount and rush on foot. Above, drones fed constant coordinates, marking every survivor, ensuring no counterattack went unseen. Each time a truck swerved off-road to escape fire, it was hunted down within minutes. U.S. infantry squads now engaged directly, cutting down fighters who closed to small arms range. Machine guns poured sustained fire into the advancing groups, while grenade launchers detonated across the desert floor. Cartel fighters tried to rally behind makeshift cover, firing mortars and RPGs at armored vehicles, but their shots fell short or were intercepted by active protection systems. Abrams tanks advanced methodically, their cannons blasting apart any vehicle bold enough to approach. A cluster of armored cartel vehicles tried to form a wedge at the center, pushing through with sheer weight. For a brief moment, it looked like they might punch a gap, but artillery fire shifted instantly. M777s dropped shells directly onto the path, collapsing the breakout before it cleared the valley floor. Survivors reversed in panic, only to collide with wrecks and minefields. The attempted breakout became another graveyard of steel. By now, the convoy was fractured beyond recovery. Trucks burned in every direction, technicals lay shredded, and mortars had been silenced by counter-battery fire. U.S. infantry pushed forward behind armor, tightening the perimeter and sweeping the valley floor. Apaches and A-10s continued strafing runs, ensuring no regrouping could take place. What had begun as a massive convoy pressing with momentum was now reduced to scattered pockets of fighters, each isolated, each surrounded. By 3:40 a.m., the counterattack was broken. Survivors abandoned their vehicles and fled on foot into the dunes, pursued by drones and tracked by thermal imaging. Some dropped weapons and surrendered immediately, hands raised in the flicker of burning wrecks. Others scattered without coordination, vanishing into the desert night. The kill zone had closed. The counterattack had not only failed, it had been destroyed before it ever reached American lines. The echoes of artillery and airstrikes finally faded, replaced by the crackle of burning wreckage across the valley floor. What had begun as a massive convoy of thousands of cartel vehicles was now a wasteland of twisted steel. Drones circling above streamed back live images, trucks reduced to smoldering husks, technicals flipped and burning, craters dotting the desert like scars. The kill zone had delivered exactly as planned. At 4:10 a.m., damage confirmed. Forward observers began the count. More than 1,500 cartel vehicles were confirmed destroyed or abandoned. Dozens of captured armored cars sat gutted, their crews either dead or scattered. Ammunition trucks had exploded in spectacular fireballs, leaving blackened craters where columns once advanced. Fuel tankers burned steadily, thick smoke columns rising into the dawn sky. Survivors on foot streamed into the dunes, disorganized and leaderless. Some surrendered, others dropped their weapons and disappeared into the desert. The convoy that had looked unstoppable at midnight was annihilated by morning. Inside the U.S. perimeter, casualties were minimal. Defensive grids, precision strikes, and overwhelming firepower had blunted the attack before it could close in. Engineers moved forward to clear mines and unexploded ordnance, creating safe lanes through the wreckage. Abrams tanks repositioned on high ground, scanning for any possible reinforcements. Infantry swept ridge by ridge, securing the battlefield. Commanders declared the valley sealed. No cartel reinforcements would be able to recover equipment or regroup. By now, the desert was littered with burning wrecks as far as the eye could see. The once mighty convoy lay in ruins. Vehicles jammed at choke points, piled into wreckage fields where artillery fire had boxed them in. The valley floor resembled a scrapyard of war, turrets blown off, engines melted, frames twisted beyond recognition. Overhead, Apaches continued slow patrols, scanning for survivors, while drones recorded every angle for intelligence and release. The footage would soon spread worldwide, showing the scale of the destruction. At 5 a.m., the message. The battle was over, but its meaning was just beginning. Cartels had believed sheer numbers, thousands of fighters and vehicles, could overwhelm disciplined troops. Instead, the desert had proved the opposite. Precision, planning, and layered technology turned that mass into chaos, and chaos into wreckage. What the cartels thought was a show of strength became their greatest defeat. For Washington, the operation was a confirmation. The kill zone worked exactly as intended, demonstrating that American forces could erase even the largest armored threats in hours. For the cartels, it was a warning that no amount of numbers or reckless charges could match modern firepower. Survivors who escaped carried that message back with them. As the first light of morning spread across the desert, it revealed the scale of the victory. Black smoke rose in thick columns, visible for miles. Scattered survivors limped across the dunes, pursued by patrol drones. American units stood firm, armored vehicles lined up in formation, weapons ready for any follow-up fight. The battlefield was theirs. The convoy was gone. The message to the world was clear. This wasn't just a firefight. It was a demonstration. Against planning, precision, and overwhelming coordination, no force relying on chaos could win. The desert had spoken, and its message was final. Try once, and there won't be a second time.